Hello, everybody. So today I want to talk about Talkspace, and I think I have found a gem here. We have found a gem. Thank you for the Patreon member who pointed me out to Talkspace. This one is big. That is all I can say. This one is big. So let's talk about therapy. Let's talk about the size of that market. Let's talk about how ridiculously low the market cap of this company is and how large it could become. So therapy. So if you don't know this, and I guess I didn't really know this too much, but therapy is actually very big in the US. It's quite common and it's quite big, and it is a phenomenon right now. There's a lot of people who say they want access to therapy, who say they like therapy. And if you look at the data, at the numbers, for example, 85% of people are found that they were more open to therapy than they were 5 years ago. And when you look at, say, Gen Z and 65 years old, it will be later. It will be important later. They cite loneliness as a reason why they seek therapy. And this is partially a way to solve that loneliness, and that kind of alleviates some of the concern that I may have about AI, right? Talking with an AI, asking an AI to become a therapist. Well, at the end of the day, that may not be the same as talking to another human on the phone. And these therapists, they are kind of at a special corner of the market, specific situation. And it seems a story of being at the right place at the right time, because Gen Z seems to really like therapy. There's a lot of teenagers that need therapy. There's a lot of quote unquote mental health or mental hygiene, to reuse you'll see what I present later. Mental hygiene. There's a lot of needs in this sector. A lot of people are more open than ever before to get therapy and to, quote unquote, talk to someone else, quote unquote, rent a very helpful, very understanding friend. And yeah, paying another human to listen to your concerns, to help you out, that's a major trend in healthcare. And it's directly linked to this thing called the loneliness epidemic, I would argue. And that's true for the 65 plus. That's true perhaps for how many people are singles these days. Like, the numbers are mind-boggling. Like, single is like a preferred way of life nowadays. But it's also true for other situation like couples therapy. That's actually a big type of counseling out there, like, trying to avoid a divorce, and you go through therapy and all that sort of stuff. Anyways, let me talk about why there is a disruption, because it was a mom and pop business. Therapists were mom and pop business. You get your degree in counseling in some sector or another, and then you're just gonna open your standalone practice, or you're gonna work in a hospital under a psychiatrist, for example. A lot of these therapists, in a way, they are kind of the nurses of the psychiatrists. That's what the therapists are in a way. And you need a master's degree. It's a fairly okay degree to get. It's if that's the best way I can put it. It's like the nurse. It's like the nurse of a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist is the MD, and then they have like 3 years of study, and then they have counselors that help out. This is what we're talking about. Although you can access psychiatrists on these platforms, we're talking about mostly the counselors that I registered on the platform that provide help, whether it is couples counseling, teenager counseling, all sorts of therapy that they can provide. Let's talk about the business really briefly. We have Talkspace. So Talkspace is mostly insurance pay, but you'll see in this analysis, I look at it as kind of a government play and playing the role of mental health and the desire of governments to offer mental health. I see a huge opportunity with school districts. I see a huge opportunity with cities. What competition do they have? Well, they have BetterHelp. BetterHelp is owned by Teladoc, and it's mostly cash pay, right? And it's interesting that Teladoc actually their main business is not cash pay, it's insurance, but for mental health they decided to go mostly cash pay. And then you have another big website called Grow Therapy, and in my view, it's kind of a hybrid where they do both. They have competition, but this is such a huge market that I believe there is a lot of space for the competition. And Of course, why do we talk about this stock? Well, if this stock was trading at 10 times sales, quite frankly, I wouldn't be talking to you about this opportunity. There's a lot of great opportunities if you're willing to pay 10 times revenue. I talk to you about this opportunity because it is trading at 1.29 times revenue. So this is let's round it down to make it more appealing. This is roughly a one-time sales business, as far as I'm concerned, and thus I'm willing to overlook things that I haven't liked in the past. For example, if I was insurance pay, I typically find that to be inferior. But if this is a one-time sales business, I'd probably like BetterHelp a lot. But the problem is that BetterHelp, which is the non-insurance pay Talkspace type business for therapy, the platform therapy, the non-insurance one, it's bundled with Teladoc. So no thanks, right? I don't want to own a quote unquote bloated business with many different entities, many different websites. Actually, if you go on BetterHelp.com, there's problems like, for example, couples therapy is another website that they launched. It's not part of BetterHelp. Like how many different websites do you need? Talkspace, in my view, it's a pure play therapy telehealth stock that's mostly insurance pay and that is dirt cheap. That is why I am talking about Talkspace today. It's one of these stocks which, market sold indiscriminately all of the SPACs. Some SPACs have already come out of this valley of despair. For example, HIMS has come out of this valley of despair. Talkspace is still in this valley of despair, and so you are still getting Talkspace at a HIMS-like price, in my view. And of course, if you look at some metrics like for example, price to sales, well, EV to revenue is what I use, but it's a proxy for price, similar to price to sales. You can see it's a 2.3x for HIMS. It's 1.29 for Talkspace. So very inexpensive here. Talkspace, just like HIMS, it's got a recurring revenue component, right? If you go for therapy, well, it's going to take you a little while to find the right therapist, but once you find the right therapist, you'll see them once a week for however many times you need, right? So it's got that recurring revenue component. It's not a one-time sale. It's not like you're selling an office visit, which is a one-time thing. And the stock is very cheap. It is 0.13. I find it particularly cheap for that stock. And you may say, well, what are you talking about? LifeMD is even cheaper. Well, yeah, it's true. LifeMD is even cheaper, but I believe that LifeMD and HIMS are actually trading at similar valuations when you take into account the fact that they have, in my view, similar opportunities. I'm looking for a niche, for an alternative, not for a HIMS 2.0. LifeMD is kind of a HIMS 2.0 in my view, without the pharmacy. Talk is a really niche business. It's specific, but it is telehealth, and it is a play on something that is very government driven, as you will see, and that opportunity may be bigger than I think, bigger than most think. And the guidance is great. They've given us great guidance. They have a buyback. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's get into the opportunity. The story of Talkspace is mostly a total addressable market opportunity. How big can this business get? And you'll see as I go through it, the answer to that is it can get pretty big. It can get pretty big. That's the answer. So, okay, they have insurance pay. And in most cases, I would say, well, it's a problem because insurance may try to not cover it. Oh, you have problems getting payments. You can't move as fast. In the case of Talkspace, therapy is therapy. There is not as much movement. They're not trying to do all of healthcare. They're only trying to do therapy and focus on therapy. And as a result of that, they want to also focus on insurance and getting insurance reimbursed. It's a specific type of offering that is aligned with what insurance companies already reimburse. So the first step is to have what they call the covered lives. How many people have actually access to some therapy benefit already within their insurance plans? And so right now they have 145 million covered lives in the US. They want to expand that. And their goal right now is within the next 12 months, so actually more like 10 months now, because this was a few quarters ago, a few months ago, this conference call. That's a conference call, by the way, I'm using here. That means within 10 months from now, we should have about 200 million covered lives, quote unquote, 200 million people who have some coverage for therapy through Talkspace. And so that's one key aspect for them, is to, then we're going to do mass advertising, and we're going to try to get those people, oh, did you know that your insurance may cover 80% of Talkspace? So why don't you see if you're covered? That's kind of like a legacy insurance and how it works. So this is a story of getting the folks, the soon-to-be 200 million lives that are covered by Talkspace, who can use their benefits at Talkspace, getting people aware of their insurance benefits and getting people to use those insurance benefits that they have. And so, of course, big insurance programs cover Talkspace. And if you want to go into some of the granularity, they have a big military program that covers Talkspace with Humana, which is 6 million active military, plus their partners, plus their dependents. They have Medicare in 12 states, but they're going to have Medicare in all 50 states by the end of the year. And they have what they call the DTE, Direct to Enterprise program, and you'll see how popular they are with actually government entities. And they have creating this New York City Teenspace with Talkspace. They call it New York City Teenspace, with 13,000 New York City teens using the service. And of course, it is the taxpayer who pays for the service. I believe this to be a tremendous opportunity. The sell is an easier sell when it comes to them, because they are targeting people who, for example, in the case of teenagers, you may not have money of your own. It's not like him, so you can spend $50 a month. If you're any career, you're going to be able to afford $50 a month at HIMSS, right? In the case of Talkspace, right, if you're dealing with teenagers, they're not going to have money of their own, so you need to make it affordable. If you're dealing with 65 plus, perhaps low income, perhaps like older elderly people, they may not have the $79 a month to cover, $79 a session, to cover. So that's why they use insurance, and they emphasize on the out-pocket cost with insurance is $15, maybe $25. Again, it's not as straightforward of just selling therapy for a cheap price. It's about getting people to check their insurance. It's a long process, but it is nonetheless an enormous opportunity, because this is a $300 million enterprise value company. How many billions of dollars is in that's worth? How many tens of billions of dollars is mental health worth of spending each year, right? And it's much, much, much higher than that. So they're going for their insurance, but the government and the insurance companies, they may work for Talkspace. It's only 300 million, Let's talk about New York City. This is an interesting one. Let's talk about New York City. Do you care to guess the size of the Department of Health of Mental Hygiene of New York City? And I was shocked when I saw that number. Do you care to guess? Pause the video and guess. All right, let me tell you. It's $1.6 billion, 7,000 employees for the health and mental hygiene department of one city, albeit America's biggest city, but one city. And do you care to know what ChatGPT thinks the size of the budget is for other major government entities like departments of health in the various cities? Well, let me tell you. Actually, ChatGPT thinks New York City spends over $2 billion on their Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Los Angeles, $1.5 billion. San Francisco, $2 billion. Chicago, $900 million. And it goes through all of the cities. It's you got just on Department of Health spending, you got tens of billions of dollars just on that. And how much of that share is going to go to mental health? Probably quite a bit. And I want to emphasize that other opportunity that they're going after, which is public schools and getting public school districts to pay. Your money when you pay property tax in the US, most of that property tax goes towards those public schools. What do they do with this money? Well, maybe, just maybe, they spend it on therapy. And if you go to Talkspace, free online support and therapy for Baltimore County high school teens. And of course, the teenagers of Baltimore are encouraged to just go on Talkspace and deal with, like I said, teen life. They deal with teen life, friend drama, relationships, stress. Imagine if every single school district in America has a Talkspace subscription. That would be absolutely crazy. I also want to talk about the fact that there's real benefit about this. The CEO was talking about that they were able to avoid in Q2 2024. They were able to avoid up to 200 suicides. So think about it. They were able to avoid 200 suicides. So there is a social element to this too, because the last thing you want as a school district is you have to have your kids be depressed to that point. So it's a real need, and it's an even more real opportunity to capture some of that socio-political, that governmental opportunity, which is the school districts is gonna pay tens of millions of dollars to try to get this service so that teenagers are not depressed, right? And Medicare is about to do the same thing with the loneliness crisis for older people. Right, this is another one you can look up. Baltimore County Public Schools, and that's a big part of their project to expand in public schools. I think it's interesting. So let's size up the opportunity. This is a total addressable market story, right? How big could this market be? Well, let's talk about it. So you have teens. We've talked about teenager. That's one aspect. Then you have Medicare, right? How many people are going to be wanting therapy, easy access to therapy for Talkspace through Medicare when they find out it's covered? The strategy right now is to wait to have all 50 states covering partially, of course, but covering partially Talkspace, and then they'll do mass advertising across the US, which is much cheaper to advertise across all of the USA rather than just advertise in 12 states and do targeted advertising. Targeted advertising is much more expensive than whole USA advertising. So that's part of their plan, and they have no idea how big that opportunity is going to be. It's not baked into the guidance. The CEO talks about it. Yeah, if they don't know how big the opportunity is going to be, I think it's going to be a huge opportunity, because people 65 plus, it's not what perhaps some Wall Street analysts may think, that they can't use computers. No, they are very good at computers. Very, very good at computers. I don't know. Anyway, check on your own parents if they're 70. They know how to use computers these days. So I don't think that's going to be an impediment. I think you're going to have a lot of uptake for 65 plus year old and therapy, especially if you're facing a disease, if you're facing a challenge, if you're facing the death of a loved one. Major need for that, in my view. Then there's employer benefits. Apparently, it's therapy and mental health is one of the hits, one of the top perks that is search in employer in EAP programs, right? Employer assistance programs. It's like one of the top perks that employers want to offer their employees is some mental health benefits. So that's that. Then you have military. Now, this one is also a sad topic. It's a similar topic to teen suicide being a problem. Well, military suicide is a big problem too. And so they have 6 million people covered in the military that need that therapy. And then you have couples therapy, right? Divorce is a problem. Breaking up is a problem. There's a bunch of reason why more and more Gen Z, millennials, and even older people are willing to go to couples therapy. And if your insurance covers couples therapy, it's anyways, there's all of it, all sorts of therapy. And I forgot individual therapy. Of course, you also have individual therapy for dealing with any sort of historic thing that people get stressed about. So anyways, that opportunity is very large, and when you go on the website, you can see all of the offer. So of course you have teenager, you have veterans, but you also have LGBT. Another major trend in there is messaging therapy. Texts with your therapist, that's something that they implement. And you have the oversight of this, which they prescribe, or they help getting medication that are needed prescribed, and that's obviously their more psychiatric side of the business, and this is what they can treat you. So it's a company that is narrowly focused on therapy, they do just that, and they try to do it the best. And I think they're going to have a much easier time selling to governments, selling to school districts than they would have say HIMSS, right? It'd be tough for HIMSS to walk to a school district and say, hey, I have some anxiety medication. Let me help you with anxiety or something like that, right? It will be tougher because it's this generalist business. The fact that they're focused, I think, makes them more compelling. And let's talk about my viewers who love moats, because I know this is one of the top questions I get in the comment section. Is, oh, there's no moat. Anybody can do that. Well, in the case of a platform, it's different, right? It's important to realize that most of these telehealth companies that I cover, whether it is HIMSS, LifeMD, or Talkspace now, they're platforms, and in the case of Talkspace, they have 6,000 licensed therapists across 50 states that are registered. It takes forever to get these licensed therapists to register. It's not like you can launch a new website and have the capacity to serve your customers right away. This is a two-party marketplace. It requires careful coordination between growing the number of customers and the number of therapists at the same speed, because otherwise you get imbalance, right? This is a problem sometimes. If you go to a smaller town, you may have an Uber, but you may not be able to get your Uber because there's nobody driving for Uber, because you have an imbalance between the demand of people who want to get Uber and the people who want to drive Uber that night. And so that's true for every platform. That's the chicken and egg problem. You need to have a lot of stuff for sale in order for a lot of customers to come, and you need to grow it conjointly. And that's why I think that creates a natural moat. Also, and this could be a 0-to-1 analysis, of course, is therapists in the real world, right? Therapists, when you look it up, the average salary is about $80,000 a year for a therapist, from what I see. It's a master's degree, you get a license, you got to take a board in many states, etc. So they advertise, of course, double. They advertise double the pay, except obviously this is not a salary, right? This is top line revenue. Then the employee would have to fill their Schedule C on their taxes, and they have to pay self-employment tax, and they have to pay a bunch of things on that. So, but nonetheless, it's very compelling for a lot of these people who can then take control. You, as a therapist, you can take control over your life. You can work from home. We know most people prefer to work from home. These are very real statistics. It's about 80% of people who prefer to work from home. So despite, sorry what investment banks say, and you got to get back to the office and stuff, you have more people willing to quit than get back to the office. And so you have all of these benefits. And I like very much that these platforms use on-demand therapists who work how they like it, kind of like a Uber, but for therapists. I much prefer that over, say, a legacy company who would have full-time hired therapists, and they better make sure that they have enough customers that month, because if they don't, then it digs into their profit, and you got to pay the therapist with your profit. I fundamentally believe, by the way, that these platforms are the future of work, and this is yet another company that uses the platform business model. I think that's going to be the future of work. Anyway, 6,000 therapists, 25 plus languages. This is a requirement that you have to be able to offer therapy in many different languages if you are to get a lot of reimbursement from the insurance companies. So 25 plus languages spoken. License in 50 states. This is moat right there. There's quite a bit of moat, and of course, number two as a moat, and the CEO pointed that out in the call. I never thought about it this way, and of course, my video of him. I still believe that, and we see it with Talkspace, right? They can't expand as fast. They can't promote the business just yet everywhere because they're not accepted everywhere, right? They can't promote, or they decide not to promote the business to 65 plus year old yet because they're only approved for Medicare in 12 states. So, and of course, if you're not operating within insurance and you want to offer a 65 plus therapy business and you don't take insurance, you're only cash pay, you can move very fast and you can start advertising very fast. they have to move at the speed of insurance, and that's a downside. But the upside of that is that because they have been willing to go through the pain of credentialing and spending an enormous amount of time adhering to various standards or various certifications versus checks and credentialing processes, making sure they understand payee requirements, unique requirements, that they can withstand an audit from their payee, right? Insurance companies don't want to pay, so they're going to audit the provider frequently to make sure that they don't find anything wrong. And if they find anything wrong, they're like, sorry, I'm not paying you because you're not fitting this component that I decided that you needed to fit. So they have to have all of this documentation, all of these notes, all of these credentials in order to catch insurance. And that creates a moat, because believe me, I understand why a lot of companies don't want to do that, right? Namely, HIMSS doesn't want to do that. And that's very understandable that HIMSS doesn't want to do that, right? Teladoc decided to do that for its main business, and it's growing so slow. It's growing at 2% revenue year over year because you're having to grow for insurance and grow at a slow speed. And that's a special case, in my view, of this type of business where you have to go through the government agencies, etc., etc., etc. But since they're willing to go through that hassle, that means that they should get a significant share of the opportunity. And I think, I see the opportunity lie in Medicare for them, and I see it very much lie with teenagers for them. I'm not so sure they're gonna do as well as say things that are not always covered, like couples therapy, for example. I'm not so sure about that. But the teenager offering that they have and the 65 plus offering that they have, I think is quite promising, and they could have explosive growth because they finally gotten approval and partial reimbursement for their business. So let's talk about the highlights of the business. Right, so the revenue, this is actually quite interesting. So if you look at how they make money, right? So the payor, 65% of the revenue comes from the payor. Then that's the direct to enterprise. So this is their enterprise offering. That's 21% of the revenue. That's when a entity like any corporation, but also the city of New York, for example, decides to offer that to teenagers. That's going to be, I think, a major part of the business. You can see it's 21%. How big could this be? What if they get just 10% of the school districts in America, right? And then you have the consumer. The consumer is only 14%. And in my view, that is the minor part. It's easy to compel someone to pay $15 an hour for therapy that would cost, say, $79, $89 on other platforms that are not covered by insurance. So the payor is still the big opportunity. Don't underestimate the government and how much government pay they're gonna get. Payor sessions is going up. The number of hours that they spend are going up. These therapy sessions, it's growing revenue quite fast, and they are beginning their operating leverage. Growing revenue quite fast. They're predicting, right? So they're predicting their forward prediction of growth. Their guidance is plus 23 to plus 30% year over year. If you want to get a clearer picture of their operating leverage, right, you see it right here. So the business is still shown as having negative EBITDA because a lot of these websites, finance analysis websites, they use the trailing 12-month number. So the trailing 12-month number is still negative, but you can see they've achieved EBITDA profitability. Now the operating leverage is kicking in. They've done a good job at reducing the expenses. This is your classic operating leverage. They're going to have some gap earnings at some point in the future, and the market will notice. And no investment advice, of course. But when the market notices, what do you see? You find that these companies get reevaluated, re-rated. Their business model is all about, first of all, growing the covered lives, because if you grow the covered lives, then your advertising gets more efficacious, because whenever someone comes on the website, types in their insurance, they find out, hey, I'm covered, right? And so they're going to have 200 million covered lives in the US, and that means that their marketing now is going to yield better things, because if you do mass advertising, like if you do TV marketing, TV advertising, you better make sure you have most of the USA covered lives, right? So that's one aspect. They can grow the member base. Okay, they grow their momentum with teenagers, with high schools. I think that's a very big deal. Launch their strategic partnerships. And let's talk about that a second. AI tools. So they've implemented a lot of tools to make these therapists much more efficacious. This is the same story as HIMSS. This is, AI notes, having your AI help you write your notes, help you with your diagnosis. And of course, if they do all of that, what is that going to do? That's going to grow the revenue. So I'm excited about the long-term opportunities here for them. But of course, what am I most excited about? Obviously, it is the cheapness of this stock. This stock is very cheap. It is a 0.13. Now, many of you in the comment section say, well, why wouldn't I buy HIMSS? I agree with you. I think HIMSS is a better business. But I have a full position of HIMSS. I have a full position in HIMSS. And LifeMD is too similar to HIMSS. LifeMD, in my view, is a little too similar to HIMSS. And it's kind of like a HIMSS, but you're not getting the pharmacy business. You're getting a giving prescription business, but then it's the real world pharmacy that's gonna earn the money on the drugs, right? So I think LifeMD is a good business. I see them as equivalent because of course LifeMD is cheaper, but it's also lower growth. HIMSS I find a better business than Talkspace right now, but I have a full position in HIMSS, and it's not reasonable for me to grow my position in HIMSS. It's I'm more than 3x on the stock, so it's not reasonable for me to grow my position anymore. I'm looking for a new position, a position that has not run yet. And when I look at Talkspace, I see a stock that hasn't run yet. Right, it's only up 24% over the past 52 weeks, i.e. roughly the same as the market, roughly the same as the S&P 500. It's still down 75% from its SPAC price. The market still largely dismisses it. I was looking at the options because I wanted to get into this stock through the options. The options are very little volume, very little options available. This is pretty much a company that is asleep, and that you could see come up as like a favorite or a retail favorite or investor favorite, an institutional favorite a few years from now. I could entirely see it, especially if mental health becomes a bigger and bigger conversation. Lastly, they know they're cheap. The management believes they are cheap because they have a buyback in place, and they've expanded the size of their buyback. Right, they've increased it by 25 million on top of the 15 million. So they're buying their float because they find their stock too cheap. And I find that their stock is too cheap, especially now that they're achieving operating leverage. This has been the dilution, essentially none of it. I mean, it's been flat, just your regular stock-based compensation for any stock, nothing outrageous. I expect this to slightly go down if they keep buying back shares at this level, which it seems like they will. So anyways, to me, this is an interesting business. This diversifies me away from HIMSS. And I like that this stock is quite cheap. So this was no financial advice, no investment advice, just entertainment. Hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.